Hey there, cheese historians! I'm Julia and welcome to Cheese History, a channel where we normally talk about the history of cheese. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. Today we're going to have a cheese off. So you might be wondering, what is a cheese off? And that's an excellent question. Usually in my normal videos when I talk about the history of a particular cheese, particularly if it's a European cheese, I end up touching on how it's made today and whether or not it has some kind of protected status, say PDO or PGI status. And if you want to know more about PDO and PGI, I have a whole video on that which I'll link to up here somewhere and down in the description below. Often these protected cheeses are made in different ways to their more generic supermarket counterparts. Sometimes they're made with a particular type of milk, or they're only made in a particular area or at a particular time of year, or only following a particularly strict set process. So I thought it would be a cool idea to compare the protected cheeses to their more generic supermarket counterparts, to see if they're really worth the extra hype and extra money, or whether the supermarket versions are pretty much just as good, or if not better, than the protected versions. I thought I'd start with a relatively common cheese, one that's kind of known all over the world in some form or another, and which New Zealand makes a lot of: cheddar. So to let you know how this is kind of going to work, I'm going to cut off a chunk of each of these, see what they look like, what they smell like, how crumbly they are, whether they are whether they have any bend to them or whether they just break to pieces when you cut them, and see what they taste like, see how they compare in terms of, flavor, which has the better flavor, which has the better mouthfeel, etc., etc. And then we're going to do a grilled cheese or a cheese toasty sort of comparison. We're going to melt some of the cheese onto a piece of toast and see how well they melt. And then I'm going to give you my opinion, what I think of each cheese, and put them onto this tier list that I created to see actually which one is better, in my opinion at least. So there are 5 different categories that a cheese could fall into. So the top tier is more cheese please, and this is where the best of the best cheese goes. You know, the cheese that makes you just want to go, more cheese please. The second tier is called great cheese, and this is where the next level down cheese goes. This is the cheese that is really good. This is the sort of stuff you would say put on a cheese platter when you wanted to impress someone. It's not quite as good as the more cheese please cheese, but it's great. The next tier down is cheesy, and this is where all the everyday sort of cheese goes. The cheesy cheese, for want of a better way of putting it. It's good, everyday cheese. Nothing to complain about. The next tier is good enough, which sort of more or less speaks for itself, I think. It's cheese that is good enough to be called cheese. Not really great cheese in any way, it's just good enough. And the bottom tier is, you call that cheese? This is cheese that really has no right to be called cheese. So for this first cheese off, the cheddar cheese off, I have 2 cheeses. This one here in the black wax is the closest I can get in New Zealand to a West Country farmhouse cheddar. It's aged English cheddar. The company that imports it, Food Snob, claim on their website that this is made by the makers of West Country farmhouse cheddar, which is one of the PDO protected types of cheddar from Cheddar Valley in the UK. Food Snob doesn't say that it is West Country farmhouse cheddar, but it's made by the makers of West Country farmhouse cheddar, which tells me that either it is West Country farmhouse cheddar or it's the cheddar that didn't make the cut as West Country farmhouse cheddar. And in the generic supermarket category, we have Countdown's aged tasty cheese. Now, Countdown is one of the 3 major supermarkets in New Zealand, and tasty cheese is what we call a more aged cheddar. We have 2 different types of cheddar, basically, mild and tasty. Mild being a very young cheddar, and tasty being a more aged one. So this is basically a generic supermarket brand version of an aged cheddar, basically. So to compare these cheeses, basically we're going to have to take them out of their wrapper. So the supermarket one is going to be easier because it just has a peel-off wrapper, basically. Doesn't want to come out. Alright, so it is basically a rectangular block. And it smells like cheddar, as I would say. It has a good cheesy smell to it. Kind of slightly acidic. Really, really nice. I'm a big fan of cheddar, by the way, so tasty cheese is my favorite type of generic supermarket cheese, so So for our food snob cheddar, we're going to have to, I think we'll try cutting it in half, and then seeing if I can cut it in half. Probably should have got a bigger knife. Let's peel the sticker off the bottom. Okay, so this, of course, being a circular wheel of cheese, is very sort of different. It does have the wax on the outside, which I'm going to have to peel off this piece, but that has a quite, still a cheddar smell, but it seems to have more sort of subtlety and complexity to it. Interesting. Just move that aside, and now try and see if we can peel this wax off. So they feel quite different in terms of like how much I can squish them. So this one's very, very firm. There's not a lot of give if I squish it, whereas this one, there is a little bit of give. So let's try cutting off a piece of this generic tasty cheese and seeing how they compare. By the way, these have come up to room temperature, so these are room temperature cheddar rather than sort of straight out of the fridge. So let's see. This one is a little bit flexible. Let's see, does it have a break point? Doesn't flex very much. And what about our English cheddar? That just basically snapped in half. So in terms of how hard they are, the English cheddar is the harder cheese. The supermarket one does have more sort of pliability to it, maybe. A little bit, but not by much. So let's see what they taste like. I'm going to start with the generic supermarket style tasty cheese. So it's definitely an aged cheddar. It has those sort of tart notes. The flavour really coats the inside of your mouth. It's not too sort of crumbly though. There is definitely some softness. It's not as aged as it could be, but it does leave that really nice cheddar aftertaste in your mouth. It's a nice cheddar. It's not the best I've ever tried, but it is quite a nice one. So let's try the aged English cheddar. See how this compares to the supermarket version. Wow. Okay. That has so much more flavour. It has like a similar sort of flavour coating the mouth. You get that really nice cheese mouthfeel. But it is crumblier in texture when you eat it, so there is more difference in texture. There is like little, it's not just one smooth sort of texture, it is more a variety of textures. You get little sort of more crunchy, sort of hard, but it's not quite crystals, but the flavour there's just so much more flavour compared to this generic type. There's just so much more depth and complexity. It's just, wow, it's night and day, man. So now for the melt test. Now I'm going to go and melt some of this cheese on a slice of bread, and we're going to see how well they melt and how well they taste when they're melted. So give me a moment and I'll be back. Alright, so we have our 2 samples of cheese toasted on bits of bread. So this is the supermarket tasty cheese, and this one is the English aged cheese. Now I managed to burn the bread just a little bit, and it's also interesting the difference in colour between the two cheeses. So the tasty supermarket cheese is much lighter than the English aged cheddar, which for the same amount of time in the oven has ended up a lot darker and a lot crisper. So let's start with the tasty cheese. It's crunchy. It's crunchy. It's really tasty. Obviously, it's probably why we call it tasty. It's tasty, she says. It's not a particularly strong cheese flavour, but it is crispy and crunchy and, tastes pretty good. Let's try the aged English cheddar. This one, obviously, much crisper. Again, toasting it has mellowed the flavour a little bit, so it's not as complex as it was when it was just cheese on its own, but it is more complex still than the tasty cheese. So where would I rank these on my tier list? So I think that for the supermarket tasty cheese, I would say that that's in cheesy. It's a good everyday cheese. There's nothing too fancy about it. It's not the most complex of flavour, but it does the job. If you want a cheese that's not as mild as some of the other cheeses that are often in kind of the same supermarket category, the very sort of lightly cheese flavoured cheeses. The aged English cheese, on the other hand, the one that's the closest that I can get to West Country Farmhouse cheddar, this one is most certainly in more cheese, please. I could definitely eat the entirety of this block. Given half a chance, I shouldn't, and I probably won't, but I could, because it is just such a complex flavour of cheese. It's just really, really, really nice, and it's toasted up really nicely too. So this was my first cheese off. Comparison between a generic supermarket cheddar and the closest I could get to protected West Country Farmhouse cheddar. Let me know what you thought of this comparison in the comments. If you've tried the original, how do you think it compares to the more standard generic type of cheddar that you get where you are? Let me know what you thought of this format in the comments and any other thoughts you have on comparing protected cheddar to more generic cheddar. And where would you have ranked the two on my tier list? Do you agree with my rankings, or do you think they should go somewhere else? Let me know in the comments below. That's all for this time, and I'll see you next time on Cheese History.